Hello, it's Andrew Eborn here with another Lives on Lockdown, and my very special guest is Marika Rauscher. Hello, Marika.
How are you?
I am amazing. How are you?
It's very well, thank you. Very
Oh,
well.
wonderful. So whereabouts are you at the moment?
Oh, I'm at home. I'd love to say Barbados or somewhere. No. I'm just at home. So I've just transferred all my work online. So in my cozy little home.
Yeah, so I was going to say the voice of choice. That's it. Marika Rauscher, the voice of choice. Talk to me about that.
Well, yeah, so I'm an opera crossover singer, so I'm trained classically as an opera singer. And as part of the umbrella of what I do, other than being a performer for operas, recitals, concerts, corporate events, private parties, and all of that kind of thing, I'm also a vocal coach and a singing teacher. And choir leader, so as a whole spectrum of different things that are engaged with the voice and how we use the voice. So another arm of that is doing communication and presentation coaching, not just from the voice perspective and the vocal perspective, but also from how we present ourselves. And, that's sort of been really interesting transitioning online, because obviously with Zoom meetings, how we present ourselves online is again a completely different platform than when we're presenting in person. So it's how do we get our energy across? How do we get that charisma across? How does our body language translate? And so it's not just the voice, it's all the different aspects of communication and presentation that come into play, which is really exciting.
Oh no, it's phenomenally exciting. And what's really interesting, I spoke to lots of people around the world, from the rich and the famous to everyday heroes, and everybody has had to adjust to this extraordinary new platform.
At rapid speed, right? It's like overnight, we've all had to learn a completely new skill set and rethink all the work we do, because of a lot of things, especially with the choirs. You can't operate on the same way that you do when you've got 20 people in the room singing at the same time. So yeah, it's a massive learning curve, but a good one in a way, because I've always shied away from technology. It's really not my strong point. And yeah, it's kind of thrown you in the deep end. You just didn't have a choice. You just have to get on with it and get on it. So yeah, sort of one sort of like gets over the anxiety and
I can't imagine you being anxious. I mean, the great thing about you is you are so incredibly versatile. And what I love about where you do the live thing, to whether I saw you singing with Matt Lucas recently, which I thought was brilliant. That was fantastic. Really good stuff. But you say, look, one of the things you've gone on to now is teaching people how to use Zoom and the various other platforms. There are lots of other platforms that people have been talking about. What are the sort of tips that you give people?
Sort of what it's mainly from experience, and where I set myself aside from a few others is that it's the authenticity of that I've been learning on the job with this as well. So my top tips have really been sort of like trying to place the computer somewhere that is accessible to daylight, or have extra lighting on hand, so that you're not sitting in absolute darkness. I always find a spot where I've got a blank wall, because the technology that I have and the setup I have, it's not a fast enough speed, or the laptop is just too old. It can't do all that virtual background stuff.
And weird, those virtual backgrounds, some of them are just bizarre. I mean, people have bookshelves already with books they've never even read. When you start getting a virtual one, what's that about?
I know, but then sometimes it can be rather distracting, is something that I found, is that you are then sort of ascertaining whereabouts in space are they floating, or, and that actually a blank canvas behind you does the job perfectly, because then people can really just focus on you.
Okay. So this is good. This is worthwhile, because so how am I doing with my backdrop?
It's lovely. I'm loving it. I'm specifically liking the chess, because I've never learned how to play chess, and it's one of my personal targets and goals I'd like to do. So, and I'm liking the flowers. It makes it more friendly, very welcoming, and great lighting. So really very...
I ticked all the boxes. Are fantastic. Well, the great thing is, on this channel, we've already had over 400 guests. from the rich and famous and people all over the world. So we've had politicians in Montenegro, we've had the head of media, had Harvey Goldsmith on talking about promoters. Toya was on yesterday. I've also tried to do not just the interviews with the rich and famous, but also teaching people new skills. So in the current climate, we've had some top chefs on, teaching people how to make everything from everyday scones to chess masters, which is what I love about it. So the great thing about this is that everybody is now accessible in a really one-to-one basis.
Absolutely. And so I absolutely loved it. It sort of opened up my client base as well to people abroad, you know, sort of whereas previously you would have had to travel there and then you've got to schedule that in with time restraints or costs. Whereas now it's really opened up that platform again. So yeah, and learning new skills and doing different things and sort of being able to communicate in a very different way. And things that I have been finding is that, you know, it's sort of, people have been talking about Zoom fatigue. And it is because you're constantly trying to read other people's energy. You know, it's sort of like, and it's like, has their screen frozen? No, they're just really good at sitting still with no facial movement.
Oh, I see. Yes, you can do. Well, cool. You know, it sometimes does that, though. I mean, it is interesting because a lot of people, and this is why what I love about it. I was talking to Roger Hall, who's a great friend. He's the Queen's chaplain, no less. And he basically, his parish, if you like, his church is the Tower of London. So talk about the best place ever. I've been a friend for ages, and he's chaplain to the Queen, so very, very wonderful chap. The congregation is normally just 150 people. He now has a global audience. So it's like all of a sudden you've got the ability to reach people, parts you've never managed to reach before, Marika. So, I mean, you must have the same thing because you are such a glorious character yourself and you deserve a bigger platform.
Oh, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful to the extent that you do have that reach. But it's also, there's so many things that you have to learn on the job. So a lot of the time, even skill sets that you think you have don't translate online. And in the same way, sort of like giving an accessible example, is that I've been tuning into some of the online shows, like from the National Theatre and things that I've streamed. And some of the plays work for me very, very well on screen. And I really can believe that I'm at the theatre and that atmosphere has really drawn me in. But then with other plays, nothing. Like some of the comedies, and when I was thinking about that, I was just like, why was that not communicating with me? Why was I not drawn into that? You could see the actors were putting the energy in. You could see it was a well-written script. There was nothing wrong with the production. But it was, if you're on your own and you're watching it on a smaller screen, I was missing the energy of the room.
Yeah. And I think that's right, isn't it? Again, we were talking to some comedians and things like that, and it's very, very difficult unless you're feeding off people.
Absolutely. And it's the same with my choirs in the sense that we see virtual choirs springing up everywhere, but those have been very cleverly done, you know, mainly sort of like semi-professional, professional singers who have done home recordings, and then somebody has very cleverly edited them all together. So, but in actual live rehearsals, you can't sing simultaneously at the same time because of the time delay and the lag. And so a lot of the time you do feel like you're doing the Marika show for an hour, singing at people, you know, and it's, again, finding the engagement and the enthusiasm. And I do it whilst playing different instruments. So the piano, the guitar, the ukulele as an accompaniment. And that's brought its own challenges. You know, sort of I do play these instruments, but I either play or I sing, as that's not something that I usually have brought together. So it's challenged my own skill set in a very different way. So you're not just sort of like then multitasking the musical skills, but then having to engage with the computer and the audience to keep that energy level up, where your focus is really like, oh my God, how do I do this at the same time? And so, you know, I've got a whole new respect for musicians who have been doing that. But as a classical singer, I don't usually accompany myself and play in a performance setting.
And it is extraordinary on that sort of basis. I mean, you talk about the new way of engaging, and I think people don't really understand necessarily, unless we talk about it, is the way that they piece these choirs together. I mean, we've done a few of these online concerts, as you know. I work with all sorts of interesting people. When you piece even 4 people together, when the Stones go together, in order to make sure it's synchronized, it's obviously all has to be recorded separately. They're not all there with Charlie Watts playing his saucepans, which I thought was a lovely moment. They all have to work on that sort of basis. And when you get a choir, piecing that together is a huge amount of work, isn't it?
Mammoth, the amount of work that goes in behind it, you know, for just even a 2-3 minute video. So yeah, as we said, you're just learning, picking up different skills as we go along, because the need is there, or the want is there. And you know, sort of like where other people, I feel like I've still got the fear of missing out. Everyone else seems to have like calmed down, and I'm just sort of like, no, there's all this technology, and there's a whole new world that's been open to me, and now I need to learn it and access it and find the time for it. And you know, the panic is on, because you kind of think, well, you know, there's a bit more time available in the sense that you've lost the commuting travel time, so you're sort of like backing up different things, and you're sort of going, well, I want to use that time productively. You know, it's like, wow, this is a blessing you never get, is this extra time. And yet, you know, you kind of feel, oh no, I'm not anywhere near where I want to be. And when people are talking about, right, we're coming out of lockdown, I'm sort of like, no, I've only started, I'm only on 3 of the list.
Right. So it is extraordinary like that. So going through your tips then, the background is good. I'm okay on the background. I've got the flowers and the chest, so we're good there. What are the other things you tell people?
Great lighting, and also if you can just use books. I'm using about 6 opera scores to get the right height of your laptop or computer, because a lot of the time you see people and they're looking down at the laptop.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. How's my height today? How's that doing?
You've got it nailed.
Look at me nailing it. I come on for fantastic tips and I've got it nailed. It's got to be good. Okay, so you're right, because a lot of times when people are, and I've got all sorts of funny boxes here and that sort of stuff, but this is the right sort of level, isn't it? You work on that sort of basis.
Because otherwise you're constantly just looking down at people. So like, for example, if you're sitting up here and you're just sort of always looking down.
And it's weird, because I mean, I talk to a lot of people, we talk to a lot of magicians, and most of the time they'll do card tricks, and all you're seeing is their groin. I mean, it's trying to sort of frame it up here, isn't it, and work. Or they're not quite sure where to look, and they're not sure which is left and which is right, and you look over here or you look over there. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, that's all. But you know, it's sort of like then it's for presentations, meetings, or even interviews like this, it just becomes a little bit more authentic if you at least are at eye level with the person you're talking with, because some people just haven't really quite got that height thing. And you know, the beauty about the setup is that nobody can see the amount of rubbish and technology that's behind the screen of the setup, you know. So you can look very smart in a small space, but everything around you is chaos. And
absolutely.
That's fine.
It is interesting. So okay, so we've got the backdrop, which is great. We've got the lighting, which is great. We've got the right eye contact. How do you communicate the energy?
I think I always say ramp up what your energy levels usually are.
Well, that's a bit dangerous. You've got to be careful of my energy levels. Can't ramp that up.
For us creatives, definitely. But it's just a matter of sort of bringing that energy to the table. And it's very hard to be consistent with that energy level when, you know, a normal conversation, you will interject, you'll interrupt each other, you'll have that flow, you'll have that energy. With online platforms, you can't talk over each other. So, I mean, you're doing very well. You're doing the sort of like nodding along and, you know, sort of like the non-verbal communication. And that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily have, or haven't really drawn their attention to. And therefore, you know, they can just be sitting there and you think the screen's frozen. So you're like, wow, they haven't, you know, showed me that they're engaged with my conversation in the slightest. And that's what becomes so draining. So it's, you know, people feel engaged if they can feel your personality coming through. So it's just like, be yourself, you know. And I've never liked being in front of a camera, which sounds like an really weird thing to say as a performer. But it's one thing to have a live performance. There's another thing to have it filmed with a camera right in front of you that's analyzing and microscopically picking up everything you do. So it's a platform that I'd say, you know, practice makes perfect. You just need to keep going. And as I said, it's a blessing in disguise that, you know, for someone like me, that I've been forced onto this, because otherwise before I would have just sort of like going,
And do you, I mean, a lot of performers, they don't like watching their own performances back. Do you ever watch yourself afterwards?
No. I try not to. I try not to. It was very disconcerting the other day, actually. I was doing a Facebook Live, and for some reason, technology was not working in my favor, and I couldn't see myself at all. I had a blank screen, and I could only see the comment section. So in that sense, although previously I would have hated seeing my own image, now being in a situation where I couldn't see my own image, I couldn't tell if I was in shot. You know, I couldn't tell if I'd decapitated myself, and that I'd suddenly gone out of, you know, or you suddenly do a movement, you've gone out of view. So that was really disconcerting. I literally had to do the whole Facebook Live blind. It was like,
actually, sometimes that's quite good, because I think the temptation, we're talking about eye contact and things like that, the temptation is for people to look at themselves. And if you're looking at yourself, it means you're not actually looking at the camera. And it means that you're not sort of engaging in the way, if we were face to face, you'd say, look, here, this is Andrew, this is Marika, we've known each other for a long time, this is what we, and you talk to each other. When you're looking at yourself down here, you look as though you're not looking at the camera.
so true. And likewise, I think when you're doing multi-Zooms with multiple people, and some people, you can tell that they've got quite a big computer screen, because you can see their eyes sort of like going,
oh, it's enormous.
Yeah.
Yes.
See that they're darting their eyes to where the person appears on their screen. But of course, to the viewer, it's a completely different layout.
Yeah.
So I don't know, you know, you're suddenly looking in a different direction to the person that's talking to you. So another top tip is just look straight forward. You can't go wrong. Hello.
Hello. Yes, exactly. And you have a look at this sort of kind of thing. The other thing that people forget is they sometimes forget at these Zoom meetings that they're actually on screen all the time. And I think, as you and I, because we do a lot of this sort of stuff, is what happens is they're reading their books, or they're picking their nose, or they're picking their teeth, or that whatever, and they forget that they're being watched by people.
Absolutely right. And there's a sort of, or people forget that they've got a mirror behind them.
Right.
It's just sort of like, I could see everything.
It's a bit of a worry. It's a bit of a worry. So any other top tips of that? I think we've got a lot of that sort of covered. All of that is actually gold dust. And if people just look at that, their whole Zoom experience will be massively improved, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of like, and they're, you know, everyone, I fell into the same trap thinking I need a professional setup. And then of course, nothing's available for the next 8 weeks. You know, it's like, gosh, by the time I've got that, we'll be out of lockdown. Yeah. And it's like, no, normal household objects will do the trick. Yeah. You know, you just need to set it up. And that I have been known to set up my space for different times of the day. I have to follow the sun. You know, until I got the lighting that I needed. You know, it's things that you just, inconveniences your living space for sure, but it gives you that professional outlook, and it just helps people to get the best out of what your presentation is or what your conversation is without the added distractions. So my top tip is, wherever you can, perhaps have a very basic or blank background. I think the most otherwise, people are just constantly trying to figure out your living room space.
Oh, no, they do. And I can tell you, it's a lovely game I like to play with people when they come. I come to the most glorious living rooms around the world. And you look at the book, and I ask them, well, tell me a bit about that book. And they've never read it. And you work, and it is just furniture, isn't it? And it is distracting, because you do want to see what biographies have they got, what autobiographies. Have they really read that? And some of them had some really strange books up there, which are very interesting.
Yeah, and that totally distracts from the interview or the conversation, and you just find your mind wandering into other places. And then
it's fascinating stuff. And I love, as I say, I love how you've adapted. So tell me about, and those who don't know, Matt Lucas has been doing this fantastic thing where similar split screen to what we have here, with his Potato Song, which is fantastic. How did that come about for you to get involved?
Well, I sort of like, I'm always on the lookout for things that are going on, and I think that every entrepreneur does. You know, you don't sit here and wait for the work to come to you. You're constantly scouting what's going on, what are people doing, how can I get involved? And I'm very much a person who likes to give back into the community or give back into charity. That's something that is, for me, part of my moral ethos. And I found Matt Lucas was doing the Potato Song, Thank You Potato. And
It's brilliant, brilliant song, hilarious, isn't it? It's like,
you just can't take yourself too seriously doing it either.
yeah.
And he'd obviously written that originally for Shooting Stars way back in the day,
Yeah.
and rewritten the lyrics to sort of like portray the COVID message. So wash your hands, stay at home, thank you, baked potato. And I love this idea. I was just like, brilliant. And the whole charity was being set up to help. It's called Feed NHS. So all the restaurants, cafeterias, canteens, and places, food establishments that are currently in lockdown, that they're actually helping to get food out to the NHS workers at hospitals. And it's just started in London, and now it is all over the UK. So it's really expanded, fantastic. So then I saw that Matt Lucas was then doing duets with lots of famous people. And so I just jumped on the bandwagon. I was just sort of like, there's absolutely no good reason why you shouldn't duet with me.
And it was wonderful because, and is it? I mean, is it a pre-recorded thing? Does he, or does he actually do it live with you? How does it work?
So that one, my one was pre-recorded, but
Right.
he has done live ones, and they record. No, I think they're all probably pre-recorded, and then but they're recording it together live. But with mine,
No, fantastic. And do you know how much he's raised so far?
I don't know the complete sum off the top of my head, but if you go to Feed NHS, then they've got the whole web.
We'll put the details in as well. And that's what I love about this sort of thing, is that it's brought out a refocus, if you like. It's brought out these everyday heroes. And we have now Sir Thomas More, and hopefully he's going to be a lot better than the other Sir Thomas More. It's now come out. We've got Sir Thomas, and people have never heard of him a few weeks ago. And all of a sudden, a guy on his 99, coming up to his 100th birthday, just walking up and down his garden. The media wanted a positive, good luck, good feel story. And they all got behind him. What was it, 33 million he raised? I mean, phenomenal, isn't it?
Unbelievable. I mean, the fact that he'd already sort of like reached his target and beyond, and then he just went, well, if the people keep paying, I'll keep walking. I mean,
and not only that, in your arena, he went to #1 with Michael Ball singing "You'll Never Walk Alone."
Yeah, phenomenal. I mean, it's just amazing what can be done. But that's again what I mean about the opportunities of being online. You know, sort of like now these things are, they have more is the word vision. You know, there's more platform, there's more visibility. You sort of like you've got more scope for those collaborations.
Sure. And that is what I love it, because again, it's collaborating around the world. What it also proves, and I always make this point, that if you go into a room full of 5-year-olds and say who can paint, everybody's hand goes up. If you go into a room full of adults and say who can paint, they sort of sift and shuffle and things like that. We lose our ability to admit that we're good at something. Now, people always say that anybody can sing. Anybody can sing. What are your views?
Absolutely correct. Everyone can sing. If you actually can vocalize, if you can speak, if you have sound, then, you know, there's only a few medical conditions where people are actually mute and can't speak. So if you can produce sound, you can sing. So, I mean, it's just a matter of honing that skill and being given the tools to know how to do that. Some people do sing out of tune. That doesn't mean you can't sing. People are using the wrong terminology for where they're at in their skill set. You know, but you know, when people ask me, when did I first start singing? You know, I would have to say it's when I came out of my mum's womb.
Fantastic. Ta-da! I'm here. Well, you jazz hands as you came out. Brilliant.
Of course, in my head I did. And everyone's like, no, I think you screamed. I was like, it was my first attempt. I mean, talk about a harsh critic.
But it's extraordinary, isn't it? So you will work with people. So when people come to you and say, okay, and do you get people, I know you work with all sorts of people, do you get people come and say, look, I would like to learn how to sing. Can you teach me?
Yeah, absolutely. I've also had people who have classified themselves as tone deaf, and they were like, do you think you can help me sing in tune? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. It can be easily done. And because it's the fascinating thing about working with a voice is that it is something internal. It's not something that you can physically see. So because we all learn differently, it's just tapping into that person and finding out how do they connect to what I'm saying. So some people work very visually. I work a lot with color. So I'll just go, oh no, I want that song to be a bit bit darker, a bit more red, or a bit more velvety, rather than a smooth, silky thread. You know, so I'm working very much with colours and textures. Other people work very much with the science, where you have to explain to them the mechanics of what is actually going on with their voice, with their body, because that's how their brain works, and they connect with that kind of information. So with people who, like that gentleman who came to me and said, I believe myself to be tone deaf, can you help? With him, it was very much working with vibrations. So it's like through humming and those kind of things, so that he could actually feel where those notes were and the placement of our instrument. So yeah, I mean, you know, it was a slow process, but he got it. And, you know, so that was great. So yeah, absolutely, everyone can sing.
So when somebody first comes to you, Marika, and they sort of say, okay, teach me, talk me through the first lesson. What do you do with them?
The first lesson is mainly technique based. So it's, I always explain that a first lesson is not necessarily a true example of where the lessons will go, because I'm ascertaining where their voice is at, what kind of natural ability they have, where their weak spots are, where their strengths are, finding out, and also, but it's finding out about them. There's no point me enforcing my beliefs onto them if I don't know what their end goal is. So it's really more psychology. It's like, well, what do you want out of this? Where do you want to go with this? What do you think your current problems are? What are your hurdles? What do you want to overcome? So it's a lot of technique, and it's also learning to gel, because it's a fact of people really have to trust you.
But it is right, like holding yourself open, isn't it? Because most people, it's rather like people are scared of speaking. You ask, they always say, when the list of top fears, at around number 5 is death, but number 1 is always public speaking. So the bizarre thing is, at a funeral, you'd much rather be in the box than giving the eulogy. Isn't that weird? And I think it is fear, whilst it's the most powerful selling tool in these extraordinary times, that's what we've had with the media. Fear is so restrictive, so crippling for people, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think having somebody like you who can bring somebody out and say, give it a go, because actually everything's possible.
Totally. And it's sort of like when you find it's that relationship. So you have to get the trust going very, very quickly and make it fun. Make people know it's okay to make mistakes. You know, it's like if I was teaching you to ice skate, I'd expect you to fall on your ass at some point.
Oh, don't worry, I'd do that. Absolutely. Yes.
Like, you're not going to do that perfectly without a wobble or falling over, you know, and people forget that with singing. They just think, oh, I'm meant to open my mouth and it's meant to just come out and sound brilliant. It's like, well, no, I've worked for months on that song or that aria or that opera. And I've spent hours on maybe just 2 or 3 notes, because it's just the vowels or the color or the sound I want to produce it's not right, you know. So people just expect everything to be instant, and it's you know, it's not instant. There's some,
as you said, and the other thing as well, Marika, is that it's like any athlete, you're working every day to keep it going, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like an old habit of practice makes perfect. But I think the fun thing about singing is that you can practice in the shower. You know, you can practice while you're doing your hair. You can practice while you're cooking. This isn't like you have to sit down with an instrument. I used to always feel quite laboured. Actually, through lockdown, I've been practicing my guitar, because I never set the time aside to properly learn it. And now I'm challenging myself to use the guitar through, you know, to accompany myself for my choirs and all those kind of things, which holds me accountable. And I think that's a really big thing, to hold yourself accountable to make that happen. But to sit down and practice always seemed, I still had that internal conversation that as I was a child, that to sit down and practice was a boring task I had to do. And then you don't want to do it. You know, I'd already talked myself out of it, because I'd already had some kind of internal conversation about that's been with me since childhood, that practice means hard work, which sometimes it does. But with singing, when you can do it absolutely anywhere, and it can be fun, you know, so it's just...
I think you're right. It's learning anything. It's that fun element. I was a trustee for many years of the Suzuki method of teaching children.
Right, yes.
And it's glorious. And for those who don't know, if you picture, probably the most famous video is they have a lot of children, probably about 3 years old, all playing the violin, all playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And it looks and sounds superb, doesn't it? Because there is such enthusiasm there. You're going straight away to playing something that people recognize. So it's not just, it sounds brilliant. And I love it. So it's got to be really, really good on that sort of basis. And I think that's the secret as well, isn't it? The best teachers are those who ooze enthusiasm, because enthusiasm is infectious.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's the one thing that's been sort of like, I say it's a bit hard, not hard is wrong. It's more of a challenge, is that online, that enthusiasm, almost you have to triple it, you know, for it to actually translate across the computer. And when you haven't got that interaction, you know, that energy has to be a little bit larger than in the room, because in the room people can feel your energy. People have it's a different dynamic. So anything online, I feel like you've just had to really raise the bar of, you know, I'm luckily very animated, and you know me, I'm very energetic as a person.
It's always energetic. And when we get together, it's always boom, and we're off. You know, it's fantastic.
So feel sorry for everyone around us.
Oh, I know, but it is like nuclear explosion. It boom. It's got to be good. But a lot of fun. It's going to be fantastic. So you're doing online lessons at the moment. So people who want to do those, they can be in touch. And how do you have the same length of time for an online lesson as you would for in person?
Yeah, for the one-to-one coaching I do, yeah. So with children, so depending on the age range, it's either half an hour or 45 minutes. Some are happy to go up to an hour. But I find if the kids have been online schooling all day and it's an after-school lesson or out of hours, their focus deteriorates quite quickly. So it makes it really quite hard to get that. So the shorter lesson I found with the kids, but the kids, they seem to have been more relaxed towards going online than the adults, because they seem to have more knowledge, I guess, from technology and from being around iPads and phones and things like that, and Snapchats and whatever. So their whole ethos to it and their energy, they're sort of like, yeah, fine, I'm cool with this, no problem.
And also culturally as well. So I do a lot of work in, as you know, in South Korea as well, and they are so used to having what they call e-learning, where you're sitting in front of the computer. And they previously, before lockdown, they did as much work, homeschooling, in front of a computer as they would do sitting in a classroom. And so getting used to them, they used to have whole e-learning conferences and so on and so forth. So all of a sudden, this new way of looking at things is opening that massive new audience. So do you have clients around the world that you're teaching at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got clients in America, Ireland, and Germany, which is really exciting. Okay. So one in Australia, dips in and out.
Oh, that's what dips in and out. That's an unusual name. No, but we love it. But you're talking about your background, you're Austrian by birth, is that right?
Yes. So both my parents are from Vienna, from Austria, but I was born and brought up in London.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Oh, stunning.
How often do you get back there?
Now, not so often.
Oh, yeah, I went last week. Lockdown. Comings and goings of Marika. Absolutely. She was in Vienna yesterday. We love it. Don't tell anybody. No, but it is stunning. I love Vienna. I'm right in the middle, right in the heart, and things like that. And the food is divine. That the atmosphere is divine. Every corner that you turn is another piece of paradise, isn't it?
Yeah, and they've got such wonderful architecture as well. So there's a lot of history there, and that's really so pretty. But yeah, you know, sadly, when I go over, I say sadly, I always go visit family. So if it's only a short break, you're just like bopping around from family to family, and you don't really get to do much sightseeing. So people who have been to Vienna have probably seen more than I have.
Right. And you've got, are the family still over there? You've got a lot of family there at the moment? Who's there at the moment?
Oh gosh, my aunts, uncles, cousins, and then I've got a couple of cousins in Sweden, in Norway, and Manila.
Manila? How did that happen?
He married a lady who lives there. So
well, that's convenient. And she said, "You come here. I'm not going over there." Quite right too. A person from Manila. So it's good. And what about your parents? Are your parents both alive, or?
Yeah, both alive and still here in London.
Oh, okay, that worked out well. So tell me, I mean, you talked early on that you came out singing when you were born. What, I mean, I'm sure that's right, and you made appropriate noises, and I can picture that moment, which is great. What was the actual moment that you officially sort of started, if you like, singing?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard question, because I've just always been a singer, in the sense that even as a child, I was the one who, you know, the parents, you see them now, you know, the parents telling them off for not looking when they cross the road. And they just grab their arm and just sort of like yank them across the road because they're too busy going la, 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 la. And that was me. I was just busy with my head in the clouds, creating songs in my head or whatever was going on. So, yeah, my parents kind of, they saw that and they did sort of cultivate that and sort of bring that out of me. But yes, I've always been in school plays and always was singing. But my first instrument was recorder, like many kids, and then piano. I learned piano from a very early age. And then I moved on to the flute. So I was actually a first study flautist when I went to university. I had singing lessons at the same time, but I just didn't have the confidence to be a frontline singer. So it's actually my flute teacher at school who picked up on it. And in a school play, he went, "Are you going to be auditioning for the school play?" And I said, "No, you know, I'll be a stagehand. Backstage is fine, or management. You know, that's where I'll probably go." And he was just like, "No, you're going to audition because I know you sing and I know you've got a good voice and you're very musical." So he was like, "Next flute lesson, don't bother bringing your flute. We're going to do the singing, we're going to learn the songs, and you're going to audition." And I was just sort of like, listen, you know, as any cocky kid does, they're like, "He'll never remember he said it. So next lesson, go in, start sort of compiling my flute, putting it together and tuning up." He was like, "Yeah, no point doing that. You can put that away." I was like, regardless, he was like, "You know, I haven't forgotten, you're not playing flute today, you're singing." And it's that audition that I ended up getting a solo on one of the lead roles, and that's where it all started. You know, because I
How
never
old
thought
were you then? How old?
that I was probably 14, 15 at that age.
Okay, a tricky age normally. So it's a sort of age when you're not quite sure you want to be anywhere. You want to sort of blend in with the crowd, isn't it?
Very happy hiding behind my flute, hiding behind a music stand, hiding behind an instrument. Very comfortable for my teenage years, and it worked. But it's, you know, it was great that you sort of, it did give me the confidence a little bit. So I was like, oh, okay, this is something I can do. It wasn't something I was comfortable doing, but at least I had the knowledge I could do it. And then it's not until university, in my second year of uni, where, you know, nobody really knows you. It's a whole clean slate in a way. And that's when I went, actually, I want to swap to singing. Let's see what I can do. And that's when it sort of started blossoming. Yeah. And then
And where did you go to university?
Dartington College of Arts.
Oh.
So it was in Plymouth and Exeter. So lovely, gorgeous place.
Oh,
and
it's stunning down there, isn't it? Really stunning. So you did 3 years there? Is that a 3-year course?
Yep, 3-year course, and I got a BA honours in music and theatre, and it was contemporary music and theatre. So we did a lot of African drumming, Indonesian gamelan. So
I love any drumming because it gets your soul, doesn't it? From the massive taiko drums, the Japanese ones, the two little things, you know, the little bongos. I mean, superb, isn't it?
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah. So I really got a love for African music and Indonesian, any world music, it's Indian ragas. So it's, yeah, a different spectrum, different soundscaping. It was just a very different way about thinking about music and scoring things, or how to use your instrument, because obviously at school you're trained very classically, it's very linear. These are the exams you need to take. This is what makes you a good musician. And at university, it just broke all those rules. Right. It just threw them out the window, and it just was like, what can you...
It's lovely on that sort of base. So you now play, talk me through all the instruments you play. What do you play?
Well, I still play the recorder.
Okay. No, the recorder's good. I think once you learn it, you're there forever. Everybody can do and it's what I'm saying about when you learn an instrument, you blow in it, you can make a tune straight away. And so that's quite good for people, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. So I do recorder, flute, ukulele, guitar.
Oh, the ukulele, you do that?
The ukulele.
Oh, okay. You do the George Formby thing?
Yeah, I've never actually sung that song.
I'm going to make you sing that. This is going to be a challenge for lockdown. Even if I bring you back, before the end, I'm going to get Marika Rauscher doing cleaning windows. That's what I want as a part.
I'll take it.
You'll take the challenge, okay? That's good.
Yeah, and I've actually got a Mongolian flute.
Oh, what's that?
I have no idea. I can't tell you. It got given to me as a gift in the Middle East when I was performing out there 10 years ago. And one of the clients, well, they just kept coming to my concerts, so a fan, I guess. And he said, oh, no, I play a little bit. I play the Mongolian flute. No, it was the Mongolian flute. And he brought it in and started playing it. And I was like, that is the most beautiful sounding instrument. I've never heard it. It's absolutely stunning. And he was like, well, I've hand carved this flute myself. Here's a gift for you. Take it back to London and let me know when you've learned how to play it. And I said, well, give me a lesson. I mean, you can't just give me this thing. I mean, it's literally a hollow stick with a few holes in it. And I was thinking, do you know what? Again, you know, my cockiness thinking I can do anything. I was like, well, I've played the recorder. I play the flute. It's, you know, I could pick up a clarinet or a saxophone and just get the embouchure right and get a sound out of it and figure out, because the fingering is pretty much the same for the notes. I said, I'm sure I can crack this, right? So he was just sort of like, I said, you're not going to give me a lesson? He went, no, that's your thing. Can I get a sound out of it, Andrew?
Oh, you can't do it at all now. Oh my goodness. So that's the other thing we're going to do in lockdown. we're going to find out how to teach you to do the Mongolian.
Right. So I've put this on YouTube. I've tried asking any musician friends. I was just like, come on, does anybody know how to play this thing? You
will be amazed. I mean, we had an appeal yesterday. Toya was with me. We had an appeal to find her a white bunny, and I have been inundated. So she's married to Robert Fripp, as you know, from King Crimson. And we have and they lost their bunny a few years ago. And I said, we will find them a new one. And we've been inundated with bunny rabbit offers, which is lovely. So we will find somebody who will teach you via this platform how to play. And we're going to get you back on the show to do that as well. Any other instruments? You do the guitar as well. You mentioned that, traditional guitar.
Oh, I'm looking around the room. What other instruments have I got lying around? And singing, obviously.
Obviously, a very important instrument. But you have the most what I love about that. What's that? Oh, you do the maracas and things like that, do you? Oh, you do those. Very good. Can you hear me? Has your sound gone?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, you're still there. Are you doing with a sign language? This is wonderful. This musical sign language.
You like it?
You're going to Al Johnson jazz hands, you know, guess the instrument, piano. I love it. It's going to be good. But you compose as well, don't you?
Not really.
You say not really. That's going back to what I was saying about asking a classroom of 5-year-olds. They all paint, you know. You dabbled in writing things, haven't you?
I used to write songs.
There you go. See, this is my point. So you've got all of the elements there, and I'm sure again, if I persuaded you, I'm going to get you playing your Mongolian thing. You're going to come up with your own composition, and it's going to be brilliant. And you're going to do ukulele, and you're going to finish on George Formby cleaning windows. It's going to be such a fantastic concert. It's a real challenge. What did you last compose? Do you remember? Do you remember when you last had a look and tried something?
As a child, I used to write a lot of poetry.
Okay.
So the challenge was setting the poetry to music and songwriting that way. And I decided that for me, songwriting and composing, that was like almost my therapy. That wasn't something I wanted to give to the world. That was something that was very personal, and I didn't really feel the need to share it. So I think those are probably the last songs that I wrote. But what I do now, because I do the cabarets, what I do is I take already existing songs and rewrite the lyrics. So I kind of rewrite the songs to the situation. And I've done that a couple of times. I've done that for corporates as well. If they say, actually, can we do something for our event? And I was like, well, great. You know, a lot of these times it's an annual gathering, or they've always got a theme involved, or they've been working on something or certain projects. And so you work those anagrams into the song, you know, and sort of theme it to their party, and then just rewrite it, which makes it really much more fun for them, because they're just...
it's great. I mean, it's exactly what Victoria Wood used to do. She would adapt, and I worked with her with a few corporates. I mean, she was at that stage married to Geoffrey Durham, the great soprano. But occasionally I would do the magic just before Victoria came on. I introduced her a couple of times. And every single one, she would do, the birds do it, bees do it, that sort of stuff. And she would adapt the lyrics, of course she did, but she would adapt the lyrics for the particular corporate. And it was always a hit because people love that. And I know you do, I've seen you perform several times. And you have that wonderfully creative mind where you have that glorious musical talent, but you can adapt it to a situation.
Yeah. And that's what makes it personal though, sort of, I think people love music. It can take you on a journey, and it's almost like it's another sense, isn't it? Like smell. You can smell something, it'll take you straight back to a memory, and music has the same effect. So when people say, what do? I was like, I create memories.
Yeah, and what a great thing to do. That's what you want to do. Fantastic, creating memories. And I also play the ukulele and the Mongolian thing. I'm going to add to your skill set. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. So what is there left for you to do other than the things I've just mentioned?
Oh gosh, well, I've got plenty of projects on the boil at the moment, which is the other thing, the whole sort of fear of missing out. I've been there's an app where you sing a cappella. That means you sing on your own. And if you imagine a Zoom screen, but you've got 4 screens of me, and each screen I'm singing a harmony with myself.
Okay.
In the same song, but I'm singing different parts with myself. So I've been doing sort of loads of those kind of videos as a challenge to myself, but also as learning tracks for my choirs, which is where it started out. So I was just like, well, I don't have everyone else here to sing the parts in. Now I've got to sing them in myself. And I just went, oh, that really works. So that's really good fun. I've also got, I'm writing an opera with somebody else at the moment.
There you go.
So, yeah, that's a deadline of July the 4th. So,
is it connected to America for some reason? Is it going to be performed then? Are you going to have Donald Trump singing along?
No, I hope not.
Well, he's now on the line. I go to line number 7. Donald, come in. He always watches this program. He'll be very pleased to hear. It's going to be good.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'll duet with Donald anytime soon, unless it's the duck.
Look at you. There you go. Very good. So July the 4th, but is it American? Is there a special event coming up?
It's just a social media thing, and I think we just needed a deadline to make sure it happens.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I've got a couple of collaborations going on with different singers and instrumentalists, and it's using these online platforms for doing virtual projects and concerts. And yeah, I'm actually doing a garden concert in a couple of weeks. I haven't felt the need to sing in my front garden. I somehow think my neighborhood doesn't really echo the sentiment of Italy. They might be just throwing tomatoes at something. I don't know.
That's Italian. Throwing tomatoes is Italian. If you throw a bit of garlic with it and that sort of stuff, it'd be lovely. Suitably Italian.
Marika ragu.
I love a ragu. Do you cook? Are you a cook?
I do cook, but I don't take as much enjoyment out of it as my sister.
Oh, right. What does she cook?
Oh, gosh, she's like the Nigella Lawson of the family.
Oh, we should get her on. Does she have a favourite recipe?
Oh, loads. Don't ask me what they are, though. Her and her husband are amazing chefs. Amazing. So, yeah, I have the ability. I think I lack the patience, you know, stand there and stir and...
Well, but what I've discovered is, again, if you get these little tips, anybody who's enthusiastic and passionate about something can learn that actually it's really easy. So because a lot of these, the difficult situation, a lot of these major chefs and Michelin-star restaurants and things like that have been furloughed. They've come on the show and they've given us their top tips: how to make a meringue, how to do the perfect scone, how to do a drizzle cake, how to do every possible dish you can imagine. And actually, it ain't that difficult to start with. And what I love about it is that people, in the same way they're scared of singing, and I started saying, look, can everybody sing? The answer is yes. Everybody can cook. And I think if you have a look and you try these things, everybody can play chess, everybody can flower arrange, all that sort of stuff. Try it. And this day and age, that's what we can try and do in this extraordinary situation, can't we?
I've surprised myself. I've made some amazing meals. But I think it's also a time thing. You know, it's sort of like a lot of the time as a freelance musician, singer and performer, it's very sporadic and antisocial hours. So the time that I do have, I never set that aside to cook. That's not something that gave me enjoyment, you know. So I was like, ugh. I do it because I have to eat. But now of like in lockdown, you do find yourself with more time. So you're just going, actually, I'm going to try that recipe out. And I've been very impressed with myself. I'm not bad.
I know, fantastic. And it's a psychological thing as well. Toya was telling me that she always associated, even though she's been on MasterChef and all that sort of stuff, she was telling me that she always associated cooking with being out of work, because she's an actress as well and stuff like that. I mean, she had time. So whatever, there's a psychological thing that if you're in the kitchen cooking, it means you haven't got a job. So it's sort of a slightly thing. But that's all changed, and they become vegetarian, trying different dishes. So if you were to prepare something as a treat, and you're having a dinner party, say you, what would you do? What's your go-to dish?
I sort of do a lovely sort of chicken risotto dish, but like a paella, prawn chicken paella. But one of my favorite recipes from lockdown is a jambalaya.
Oh, I love a jambalaya.
Was delicious, if I do say so myself.
Very good.
I was just like, wow, this is good. So yeah, I think I'd have a jambalaya. But if I was to have dinner parties, I love the idea of, again, theming it. You know, I'd have like an Indian night and then just have Indian music playing, or, you know, Mexican night, and then everyone has to dress up. You know, I love those kind of things. So
absolutely, we love it. No, but you're right, and that's because everything, when people talk about clubs and theatres and all that sort of stuff, it's an experience. So what happens is, if you can play with all of the senses from the moment you walk in to the moment you leave, that's what it's about. And they always say about meals that you enjoy it 3 times: in the anticipation, in the consumption, and in the memory.
Yes,
so
it's
true. Do that makes sense.
It's true. So yes, I think that would be my, you know, I'd have to find the theme and then go from there.
Okay. No, I love it. Fantastic. Well, look, it's been a real joy catching up with you. I am so looking forward to hearing you play the ukulele. I cannot wait. Cannot wait till you're cleaning windows. It's got to be good. I'll put all the details of your websites and things like that, so when people want to, in their droves, come to you to be taught all these wonderful things, from using this platform to learning how to sing to present and other things. But for now, thank you so much for joining me.
So much for having me. It was an absolute joy. So lovely to see you.
And you. And we'll catch up again soon. We're going to bring you back, and you are going to do all those things. Promise?
Yes, I promise.
Thank you. You're good. Bye-bye. Bye. So there you have it, Marika Rauscher. What a wonderful talent. And it just goes to show that everything is possible. If you want to learn a musical instrument, if you want to learn how to sing, if you want to learn how to cook, any and all of these things are great. Do get in touch. LOL, that's LOL, at octopustv.com. If you've got any comments or you want to be on the show, do let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to Octopus TV for more of the same. But in the meantime, keep on singing, and I'll see you very, very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.